We are live. Welcome to Worldwide Slot Car Chat on Zoom, number 257. I'm your host, Greg Gaub. Most of the gang is here. John Kit is off getting new skates fitted, so he's just going to be a little happy camper today, having all kinds of skating fun. But we do have Mr. Maurer and Mr. Young and Mr. Weber and Mr. Garth and other people. And let's talk slot cars. Anybody got any show and tell? I'll do my quick little show and tell. I finished what we're calling the racing circuit for IMSA. I kind of showed that beginning project last week, and there we go. Now it's done. So this is all of our tracks in the IMSA Electric Motorsports Association Slot Car Club in the area. We have 10 tracks and we race 10 weeks, so basically a different track every week for every race of every series. And this is basically the order that we typically run them in unless there's a scheduling conflict. So this is Fossamheim is Scalextric Sport. Road Patlanta is a routed wood. Victory Lane, Scalextric Sport, Brickyard Sport. Rusty Roads Raceway is our newest track. That is Polycar. Spa Mazenschamps is 3-lane wood routed. Everett Motor Speedway is also Scalextric Sport. He's going to soon convert his 4-lane King-inspired track to a 6-lane King-inspired track in almost the same space. Currently, it's 8 by 16, and it's going to be 9 by 17. And with some clever finagling, we managed to get 6 lanes of this pretty much the same layout into that space. Jennings Raceway Park is 4-lane sport. Rainier Raceways, that's my track, 2-lane sport. And RNS Raceways is 4-lane routed wood. That's Russ's track with the big elevated bank. This was a fun project, and I'm printing out these for all the guys. They're on my big printer, so they're about 14 inches wide. And there you go. Everybody's loving them.
That 4-lane to 6-lane, is that going from plastic to plastic, or what is it the same?
Yeah, he's sticking with Scalextric Sport. So it's mainly, I believe, because thank you, Josie. Mainly because he's got kids and they run magnet cars from time to time. So, but yeah, 4-lane Scalextric Sport currently, and it will be 6-lane Scalextric Sport in however many weeks it takes him to get all the extra track he needs.
Amazing. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. All right, that's it for me. Mr. Weber's got his hand up. What would you like to share? You're still muted. You're still muted, John. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. Recently got a book. This is a previously owned version of Dave Friedman's Trans Am book, and it's really, really good. If you like getting into the rivets like that much. This doesn't really get into the rivets. He doesn't talk much about how the cars are prepared, what tricks were used, all that stuff. This is about the racing that went on. There is some info about the teams, but it's really nice. As you can see, that this happens to be some of the color pages. Most of it's black and white, but it has some really nice color. And he's not the only photographer that was published in this book. There are some others. Some nice shots of the 68 or 69 Pontiac Trans Am car. Those are kind of hard to come by. I mean, you can find all kinds of stuff about the reproductions that are out there now, and there's tons of stuff about those. But anyway, I would recommend this book. I don't know if it's still in print, But
Does it show the AMC Hornet that was in that?
excuse me,
Does it show the AMC Hornet?
it does not. However,
Okay.
there is a photograph of Corvairs
Yeah.
Trans Am. So you know, they were the second generation Corvair running in the Trans Am. I think they only ran one race. There were two of them in the first race, and they didn't come back. So I think they were classed with the 5-liter cars.
Yeah.
And of course, that didn't work very well
No.
for the Corvairs.
Worked for Porsche, but not for so much for Corvairs.
Yeah, Corvairs are much heavier, not nearly as sophisticated suspension wise and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But not engineered for the same thing. The other thing is, guess what that means?
I would bet that's a tire chewer.
Yeah, tire grinder. And Greg was kind enough to ask what colors I would like for it to be. So I made a few suggestions, and it's gray and orange for the most part on the blue base. I think it's going to be really cool. So thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
Yeah, have fun putting it together.
Yeah.
That's not a joke. I actually enjoy it.
I'll be watching those videos. And one thing I was going to ask you, I have a power supply, but it only produces 2 amps. Is that going to be totally useless for this? Do I need to get another one?
I wouldn't say totally useless. You might have to give it more volts than you really want a true at to get it going.
Okay.
And then once it's going, you could turn the voltage down a little bit, and then use very light pressure. But it's going to slow down a lot when it's under load.
Okay.
If it gets going, I think it'll probably get going. And yeah, very light pressure.
Sort of like a 3-phase motor where you got to kick it in the beginning to get it going, and then you can back off.
Yep. Maybe. I mean, it depends. Maybe the power supply has some kind of peak that exceeds 2 amp, and it's 2 amp continuous or something. I don't know. Worth a try.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I figured. But I was looking on eBay, and there's tons of them, at least right now, before the tariffs kick in or whatever. But there's tons of them that are $35. Of course, you can spend $250 easily if you want to. But
yeah, but usually when people ask, I recommend those $20-$25, brick power supplies with the one knob to turn it on and change the voltage. Ideally, you want to at least be able to see the voltage. But if you get one that's not too much more expensive that has both voltage and amperage shown on it, that's helpful. But as long as you have adjustable voltage, they usually go from like 3 to 12. And as long as you get one that has 5 amps, don't get the 3 amp one, get the 5 amp one so you got plenty of headroom for when it is under load, so it doesn't slow down so much.
They look identical.
They look identical, yeah. So make
when
sure.
you pull down the menu, I think the choice is 3 amps, 18 volts, or 12 volts, 5 amps. Definitely get the 5 amp one.
Yeah. Yeah. Pay close attention to the description before you hit the add to cart button.
or the credit card.
Yeah.
Okay. One other thing, there's this another model I'm going to be trying to build is a NASCAR version of a 1970 Chevelle. We had a guy from Chattanooga named Friday Hassler raced back in the day against all the killer Fords, and Chryslers. He wasn't terribly successful, but it was something for us Chevy guys to cheer about. And the big sponsor was a place called Rock City. Anybody know what Rock City is in Chattanooga? Apparently not.
Sorry.
it's an underground, one of these underground things. It's on Lookout Mountain. You go in these caves, and they're huge caves in there, and it's a tourist trap. It's probably more trappish now than it used to be when I was a kid, but anyway, it's pretty interesting. They used to paint. They'd go out and their main advertising, besides Friday's race car, they'd go out and pay for the paint, and they had special painters to paint farmers' barns alongside the highways, and they would have this big sign, Sea Rock City, all around East Tennessee, northern Georgia, I guess northern Alabama, all the places around Chattanooga. They had those things, kind of interesting stuff. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, John. Go ahead, Dewan.
Okay, is my mic working okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Great. Okay, because I just switched over. I last week I got a package, but I was in the hospital, so I didn't get a chance to open it. So I just opened the box, and I'm taking the 2 cards that came out of my package out to do a live unboxing type of thing.
Right here, world premiere.
Yeah, it's not much to it, but it's a Skill Electric, of course, and just their GT40
Yeah,
that I liked. I have the 3-pack that came with the 3 Le Mans winners, or the 1, 2, 3 Le Mans race, So now this adds to it, and I pulled out the second box. This is Skill Electric as well, and I don't know how many of you guys have done what I think what I did, but this is my second car.
Same one.
One for go, one for show.
I've done that.
No.
Accidentally.
These were pre-orders.
Oh,
And so I pre-ordered it a couple of times. Didn't realize that until it came into the box.
oops.
I did that with the. I did the
But
same.
you can't
thing
go
with
wrong.
I did the same thing with the Pioneer General League.
Yeah.
Funny. Do you race
Yeah.
those?
No. You said about have I raced will I
Your
race
other
these?
ones? Do you race
Oh
them at
yeah,
all?
I race those, and they're like my IROC. So I would have those 3 GT40s and another oddball car. Not oddball, but it was same vintage. Now I have 3 GT40s. Even though it's the wrong year, but
Yeah. Have you broken the chassis on any of them yet?
I haven't broken. No, they're all running in good running condition.
But-
They're my social cars.
So you
They're
pretty
not
much
race. I'm not racing them.
and leave them stock, and
What? Say that
you
again?
pretty much leave them alone and leave them stock.
Oh yeah. This is just straight, just family, friends over having fun.
Yeah.
IROC type of thing, not IROC, but
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
Okay.
The only reason I say is because having raced them a bunch of times, especially when I was a magnet racer, the chassis boner mounted stuff is really fragile. It breaks off at one particular spot that's very, very thin at the rear where the motor mounts. And but
Okay.
as I say, that was in my magnet days, so that could have something to do with it.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't the only one out there that just accidentally buys 2 cars. It's about the 3rd or 4th time I've done that.
No, you're not the only one. All right.
All right.
Thank you for sharing. Ready, Jim?
Let me find my thing here. I've got a couple cars to show you. One is something that I don't have, but it's coming out. I just got some pictures of, and then one that I'm working on building. And you may have seen this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've seen all the pictures. Alan sent me some extra pictures of these, the new Revo slot Mazda RX-7. And I think from all the rumors that I'm seeing that this is a car for summerish or something like that. I've heard different rumors, but I don't really know. But with Revo Slot, typically if it's this far along, it's going to be out fairly soon. So here's a close-up picture of the body. Looks awesome as usual. And there are two versions of this car, just like a lot of the Revo Slots have. You'd see the car in the back on the left has different fender flares than the car in the front. The car in the front, I think, is the IMSA car. The other car with the rounded flares are the cars they brought over from Japan that ran in the 24 hours. So this thing's coming. There's 3 liveries. They're out there on the internet if you want to go look at them. But thanks, Alan, for letting me use these pictures. My next one is a car that I'm working on. So I got this from the 3A3D guys, and they're reproducing Trans Am cars. So they have the contemporary Trans Am cars. So they have the Challenger, which is the car I have here, and the Mustang and the Camaro, and they're working on the Camry. For some reason, the Trans Am is allowing the Camry in this year. And there's the chassis. I have definitely no plans, designs, wishes, or intent to do this type of thing as far as 3D printing, which I got into. But that's the basic chassis, 3D printed. He printed it for me in a couple different colors. That's why the production, I think, are going to be black. But this is the one that he sent to me. The interior is 3D printed out of resin. The other is out of PLA plus. And there's the mock-up of what I've got going so far. I'm using some old Group C wheels that I've got left over and a short can motor and gears, putting the thing together. I hope to get it on the track this weekend. And then in my 3D printing world, I did print some stuff. In our group, we do not allow fluids on the track. So I decided I wanted a pit box that would hold my lint roller, and you can see the slot in the back for lane stickers. That's all I need for the way we race. So I built some other stuff. The little ovalish things in the middle are stoppers to go on the axle. When you run a Sidewinder car, you take the tires off. There's nothing to hold the spacers on. So I just I've been putting gears on, extra gears. So I just made some stoppers that are just slip over. I don't have to set screw in. So that's my 3D printing world. You see a couple sets of wheels on the bottom. So I've had my fair share of failed prints, but overall it's going pretty good.
Yeah, those look good. You do that? You do your little lint roller and lane sticker holder in Tinkercad or something like that? Or
Yeah. I used Tinkercad before, so I'm familiar with it. I wouldn't say I'm an expert in it, but I've learned how to import shapes or create my own. That was actually just created with a cube, and then I learned about infills this last week. So the first one I printed was with lightning infill, which is great if it's going to sit on the shelf. But the first time I handled it, I could feel it. I didn't break it because I was not trying to, but then I went to a 10%. I can't remember the name of it, but a grid type infill. It works great. So learning as I go along.
That's how it works. All right, good stuff, sir. Thank you for sharing. And Jeremy, you're next.
All right. This wasn't really planned, but earlier you guys were talking about power supply. And one of the things I've done recently is I took an old laptop power supply, which is 24 volts and 8 amps, which is plenty for tire grinding. And then you can buy these kind of buck step things. I don't know what this is called. Anyway, you put you put the power supply into it. Let me do it here. And it tells you, you've put 24 volts into it and you've got 8 amps. And then from here with the knobs, you can adjust it down. If I want to tire grind my with my hoodie there, I set it next to it, and then I can see the voltage. I'm going to put out 3 amps just to get the wheels turning, and then I can switch over to amps, and you see it's drawing 1 amp. And then as you move you grind down, and that's like at 1.5 amps, and then you can back off it. So you can kind of tell how hard you're grinding and down. But the only thing I was thinking, like I've got air vents on here because it's got a little heat thing in there, and it comes out. I need to like build this up bigger to hold the hoodie, but then I was thinking like, what else would I add to it? Maybe just spot for tools to put in there or something. I don't know. But anyway, his need for a power supply got me thinking the cheapest way is just an old laptop power supply if you've got one lying around, because they have a ton of amps in those things. That that was it.
Probably not hard to find at,
Yeah, you go to any recycling store, like a computer
Yeah.
recycler, or even like Goodwill, a lot of times will have bins of
Yep.
electronic junk.
you can't rely on
Just-
the computer, but you may be able to rely on the power supply.
Oh, for
Just
sure.
don't buy one new.
Yeah, don't buy it.
No.
And then some kind of thing to be able to turn down the volts. I mean,
Well, yeah, you will need obviously some kind of power adjustment, but
Where'd
I
you
mean,
get
like I
your,
said,
where'd you get the adjustable volt
I got these off of AliExpress like 2 years ago, and just I realized, oh, I should use it because recently I had a different way to do this, and I was like, I just might as well take the time to design something to put this in at a good angle for me to watch it. And then what really inspired me to do this was trying to grind the front tires on the new like NSRs, where like it takes forever. I don't know what they put in there, but they put some kind of hardened plastic in there or something. But I would sit and then grind these things for 8 hours just trying to get them down to even. And it's like, I know it's, but if you're doing other work and you set it aside and you go, oh, the amps just changed, let me just adjust it. And then, every half hour or so, you just kind of keep adjusting it and keep it water or keep it cool. But yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
I'll share a link with you on what those bucks
Yeah.
are. But then,
Because I need to replace that. I had that in my old slot car box when I got from Frank Sisto, and it collapsed on it, and the electronics on it is gone. So I need to kind of replace it.
yeah, the
So
kind of nice thing about these, I mean, you can find them anywhere, is that it only has four, that blue tab there is where the wires go in, and it says plus in, minus in, and then plus out, negative out. So there's only four wires to screw in, or if you do it that way. Now I did it the fancier way by putting a little plug to make it easier. But yeah, I mean, you could just directly hardwire it straight with four wires, two in, two out. I'll send you the link in the chat. Cool. That was it.
sounds good. Looking forward to that link, and I might hit one up. See what I can do.
yeah.
All right, John, did you have something else, or did you?
Yeah. Along the lines Luan was showing us, a couple of weeks ago was my birthday, and I have a really cool next door neighbor. She's 85 years old and loves to hear about slot cars. She was the first female musician in the University of Tennessee marching band ever, back in, I think it was 1955, something like that. Anyway, she got me a birthday present, and it's a Pagani in Gulf livery. Now I like the Paganis, but anyway, I'm not going to open it.
Those are nice running cars.
Are they good?
Yeah, I've got two of them. I ran them at the supercar class that I've got, and they work really well.
Good deal. I really like the way it looks, and the Gulf livery looks pretty good on it. I think we overdo Gulf liveries apparently, but seems to me
for sure.
that it's nice, and it's quite a surprise. That's all of that.
That's
Thank
cool.
you.
That is cool.
I wish I had an elderly neighbor buying me slot cars.
This lady still works. She's a lab technician for a company in Oak Ridge, where near that does. They're working on a device that a soldier can carry on his back that can measure blood volume of, say, a wounded or injured person. Big problem is if you give somebody that hasn't lost a lot of blood a transfusion, you give them blood, you can kill them if they haven't lost a lot of blood. So this is one way of doing that. Anyway, she's working on this cool thing. So she's just really cool. Nice person.
All righty, looks like we're done with show and tell. Unless anybody else has a show and tell they want to show and tell, and do some show and tell. No more show and tell. All right, show and tell is over. No more show and tell. Time for Club Corner. If you want to talk about past, present, or future racing, raise your hand and we'll talk about that. And then eventually we'll just open up the floor to anybody. Looks like Jeremy shared a link already. Go ahead, Mike. You don't have to get your hand up.
No, I missed my proper thing to do. Let's see. I think I've got a share. Yeah,
We love viewing your knuckles.
yeah. I just knuckle down. I finger it out eventually.
There we go.
So there you can see that we had two races. The first one was Can-Am cars, the Thunder Slots, and Joel wasn't happy because in the choosing he didn't get his Shadow, which he loved that car the first time he drove it. So I got it this time, and I kicked their butt. So it was the Shadow against the Thunder Slots, and not really. There was one Thunder Slot, and I Shiggy ran the Chaparral for the first time, and he did quite well at first. I was behind for a while. I had a couple of errors that were exacerbated by ghost cars. The ghost cars are disagreeable things. You would think they're just traveling around there, but you know, they cut the corners a little and poke places where you don't expect them to be and knock you right off if you're just not in the right place at the right time. So, but it was a fun race. And let's see, what did we do the second race? I forgot. But anyway, it was a good day overall. Although I really sort of went to town on the guys. Both of them had been running 124th cars, and there's a lot of residual from that because they tend to be, you know, kind of punch and break and punch and break, and my track is not that at all. So they had a fair amount of trouble this time. Especially Shiggy did a 4-hour enduro on Saturday, so he was still sort of buzzed from that, and so he had a fair amount of problem with that, but he did pretty well with the Chaparral. And the Chaparral, I've lowered the wing from its stock position, so it's not quite 6 feet in the air like it is on the real car. It's a little bit lower, but I didn't want to, you know, take it off and run it that way, although it runs better that way. But it was still pretty evenly across the three cars. We were within hundredths of a second of each other for lap times in practice and in qualifying. So, but other than that, it was a great time, and we all enjoyed it. So, yeah, that's all. That's all I got. And I will. Oh, thank you.
Take care of it for you.
Yep.
Stuff. We're running Thunder Slots still, and this Monday was. Can't believe I'm spacing out. This Monday was Blair's track, Spa Mazenchamps, a 3-lane routed track. Cars performed great. I did not. Somewhere in the middle, you know, since we race crash and burn, you know, just one wrong move and you lose a bunch of laps and tumble down the finishing order pretty much. Good time. Anybody else want to talk about racing?
Oh, I remembered the other class that I had was Le Mans cars. I had 917 Porsche and the other 70s Le Mans cars that we had. But I still finished quite far ahead on those. Joel is still getting to know this a little bit. He's not that great a racer on the 124th, and his inefficiencies, let's say, are exacerbated by the digital. And he has a habit of pressing. He has to press only one button to do the fuel fill, and invariably he will press both buttons and do a track call, and it's two track calls in a row then, and it's like there's only 2 buttons. That's all you have to do, but he still gets it wrong. And of course, if we do oxygen, he's really confused because that's a little different procedure. So, but anyway, we still had fun. So,
Yep. All right, Craig, you were waving at me.
Yeah, I did. We're going to be adding RevoSlot Group 2 cars, or not Group 2, but yeah, RevoSlot GT2 cars next year. And I understand you race them up there in your area, the RevoSlot.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty popular all over the place.
We haven't set our rules yet, but we're looking at basically stock. Can't change a thing, not even the tires.
Yep.
How do they work for you guys, or do you do any changes?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a change necessarily, but we allow the tires to be trued, to be glued and trued.
Okay.
That's still beneficial. You know, the cars run great out of the box, but there's no car that doesn't benefit from nicely trued tires.
I spoke to Alan. He says they don't even allow gluing, just truing.
Which doesn't make any sense to me, but Alan is Alan. There's multiple reasons to glue and to not glue and to true without gluing doesn't, it doesn't, because as soon as anything happens that glue is needed for, such as the tire peeling off the wheel.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get that.
It negates the true. So
which of the cars do you allow to run?
well, I mean, we pretty much do everything that's in the class. We don't say like it's gonna be a single make or model class.
You allow the McLaren. You allow, sorry, not the McLaren, the Mercedes. That's more like a prototype. It's not.
I think the Mercedes is a GT1, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Group 2 sedans?
No,
No, he's talking about like the Porsche Group 2.
Oh, GT2. I thought he said Group
GT2.
2. Sorry.
I did say Group 2, and I corrected to GT.
Okay.
yeah. So the Mercedes and the Ferrari F40, and then the ones that look like GT or super or whatever
GT cars.
GT cars, those are not allowed in GT2. But you know, Porsche, Viper, Marcos, you know, all those are.
The Lister. What about the Lister?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there one that stands out as the best of the group? Like that all the tuners are just going to eventually graduate towards?
There is on our track. It's the
What is it?
Marcos.
Marcos, that's what I heard.
It's
All
going to
right.
depend on the layout for a lot of them. Like, but the last time we raced them, we had a pretty good variety. Isn't there an NSX?
No.
What's the one that I'm thinking of?
They have a Toyota Supra.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, so there were a few Supras, but I mean, I have pretty much every yellow and blue GT Revo slot there is, and so that's basically, you know, that's almost one of each model in GT2, and for the most part, all of mine ran close enough that the determining factor is going to be my finger, not
Not
the
coming off.
But spec wise, yeah, it was pretty much just stockity stock, glue and true the tires. Otherwise, that's it. I think maybe we allowed a little bit of ballast, but even when we allow ballast, it's never more than 10 grams total, and it's usually 5 grams maximum. But I don't even put ballast in those cars. I don't think they need any ballast.
They're heavy the way they are. I don't know why you'd want to add ballast.
Yeah,
We're
To
100%.
balance them out. I've had
Yeah, we're-
some of them are a little bit better with the weight moved around a bit.
Yeah, we're 100% stock out of the box. You can true the tires and you can glue them if you want, glue them or trim them. But both classes, the GT1 and the Group 2s, they just straight. I think we are given an option of, because because I think they give you two guides, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
And you can choose between the two guides, and it's universal. But if you go into a ski electric, you want to have the shallow guide. But those are the only things. And I think no, I thought we were allowed because I think one of them has the spring loaded. I can't remember or not.
Group
Most
twos
of
do.
Yeah,
most of them have
okay.
a really light spring.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're allowed to take it out, but we don't know. Actually, we don't. We're not allowed to take it out, but it's just in there. Yeah, that's what it
I
is.
I wouldn't take the spring out if it were me, because I would put a spacer on the top side and pull it up. But by taking the spring out, you're giving that guide more slop because that wire diameter is wrapped around the post. So if you take the spring out, you're going to get more slop in your guide.
You shouldn't, when you take the spring out, it will just seat properly right up in the chassis.
True, but the spring goes around the shaft of the guide. When the shaft goes up and down, that spring is around that shaft. So if you remove the spring, it's that wire diameter around the shaft is gone now. So it allows it to slop just a little bit more.
The spring doesn't go into the guide post hole. It's between the guide.
Go around.
Yeah.
The spring goes around the guide shaft, and when you push it up through the hole, it allows the shaft to go up and down through the top.
Yeah.
By putting a spacer on the top side, you pull it up, and I leave the spring in. That way, you don't have that side slop removed.
Yeah, we're not allowed to do that. So that's
Yeah, neither are we. So it's never
Yeah.
really been into. Nobody's ever said, "Oh, gee, can't we remove that spring?" And I've never felt that having it in or
Here's
out.
what some of the others are doing. So
For the wood tracks, that's the first thing we do is take the spring out. Cut the guide on top so there's no vertical movement. And then we do allow any tire because kind of my pet peeve, there's no way to tech if you're running stock tires.
Yeah.
So we allow any tire. That being said, there's only a few that fit on it, so it kind of is self-policing. And the stock tires do work extremely well, and that's what most people run. But we've just
Yeah.
gotten rid of the rule because it's not enforceable.
yeah, that's what I found Electric Dreams did too. They allow any tire on that car, but
When Electric Dreams first started with RevoSlot, they allowed the GT1 cars, but they were given a 5-lap penalty over the course of the race. So
That's
good,
interesting.
bad, or indifferent, they felt the GT1 cars were faster. And so you could run either one, but at the end of the race, you lose 5 laps if you ran a GT1 style car.
Yeah, I think that the Spider and the Toyota GT1 cars definitely have an advantage simply because they're so low and
the
wide.
body profile is lower. Yeah.
Yeah. I raced my Ferrari F40 when we ran the GT1 class not too long ago, and it was outclassed. I mean, I had no chance. So I'd be more inclined to allow the F40 and maybe even the Mercedes in the GT2 class.
We're going to allow the F40 in and
Yeah.
the McLaren, but not the GT, not the Mercedes the way it looks.
That's
The
what
Mercedes is GT1. See the CLK?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. The F40 and the McLaren both technically are also GT1.
They're GTR, but it's a GT1, right?
Yeah. So when we ran GT1, pretty much everybody was running the Toyota or the Spider, and a couple of us were running, like I ran the Ferrari. Another 2 guys, I think, were running McLarens. Yeah, it makes more sense to me to allow those cars in a GT2 class than it does to allow the
The Toyota, yeah.
Toyota and the Spider to, those.
Yeah, the way we did it also is, again, good, bad, or indifferent. If you go to Electric Dreams and look at RevoSlot, they have a GT2 category. And it's a misnomer because they're not all GT2 cars, but in their GT2 category, those are the cars we allow.
Are the ones that are in the Electric Dreams GT2 category.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, they're not all GT2 cars, but that's the way they labeled them. So that's what we did too.
Yeah.
And then back to the other question, the reason the Marcos and the Porsche 911 GT2 seem to dominate on our tracks, they're 2 of the cars that have the shorter guide leads. That's the big difference between the Marcos. The Marcos and the Porsche GT2 are both short guide leads. All the rest are longer. And that's why on our tracks, they gravitate to the Marcos and the Porsche.
Yeah. Good for shorter, more technical tracks. All right. Any other questions on that, Craig?
No,
Moving along. What you want?
thank
What
you.
you want to talk about, Dewan?
Oh,
The far out
this
racing.
weekend we have the Far Out Club racing over at Electric Dreams, and we're using the Racer Sideways. What was it? GT Group Fives, yeah. Racer Sideways Group Fives and the NSR F1s. It looks like I'm about 90% not going to attend, but that may change. I really prefer, yeah, I really prefer attending to record the race, but they're going to sit it on the live stream, so that kind of negates my real need for being there. But one of the interesting things, this is going to be the first time that we've used, no, this is the second time we've used the sideways cars where we had to put the ballast in the back. But for the reason, for whatever reasons, on the Cunningham track, with the non-magna braid and the resurfacing of the track and things like that, we've been mandated to put the weight for this race and this race only, put the weight in the front slot of the Racer Sideways. And apparently some of the guys went out there and did some testing and saw that the performance was degraded by having it in the back, based on the current conditions of the new Cunningham track. I say new, but the refurbished Cunningham track. What I'm just kind of throwing this out there. I know this is Club Corner, but from the real technical gurus like Jim, and I know that Dennis isn't on here, but I can someone enlighten me a little bit more on, because I want to learn more. I'm very technical, engineering minded, and everything, so I kind of like to know the physics or the logic behind why we remove the weight from the back, the ballast weight from the back to put it in the front, based on the conditions of the Cunningham track. I saw some notes here that says reason why it was for that. No, it doesn't really see the reason. I think it was mentioned in the club, but I don't see it in writing. But I was wondering if anyone has any insight on that.
I can throw some ideas out there, and maybe Jim will back me up or tell me I'm wrong. But my first reaction is they switched the braid out from magna braid to non-magna braid.
That's
So
correct.
so you're going to lose the 15 to 20, whatever grams of downforce they were getting, because those are angle winder cars. I forget the specific motor, but plenty of magnet traction gained from those motors is lost, right? And when you have ballast and you move the ballast towards the back of the car, as they were doing, when it still had magna braid track, the ballast in the back, the way that I describe it is it increases the pendulum effect of the car as it goes around the turns. That weight being so far away from the guide is gonna help the car swing out. Now, when you have more magnetic traction, you're gonna want to encourage that to a certain extent. But when you have less, you're gonna want to discourage that. So you move the weight forward. So it gets the ballast, it gets more weight, to help hold the car down and get better traction and performance and stuff. But it's not going to have a more pronounced pendulum effect because of being in the back.
Back up, and the thing, the weight in the back was counterbalancing with the magnet force of the magnet force on the braid, and now that that's gone, it's too much of I see that. Okay, I can see the physics in there.
I mean, that basically, whenever I have a car that wants to roll rather than slide, I'll put the weight towards the back. And if I have a car that's slidier, and then I'll move the weight forward, or I'll maybe even split the weight and put it on the outside of the chassis, in front of the rear wheels. And if it's really bad, then I'll put the weight way in the back, as far back as I possibly can. I don't do a whole lot more than that. I mean, I used to put weight up front thinking, oh, I need weight up front to keep my guide in the slot better. And that's actually not how it works. It just throws the balance off. Rarely do you put a bunch of weight up front. But that's me.
I would dispute that a little bit, but
well, you do a whole 60-40 balance thing, and that's
Right.
that's half the reason you put weight up front. I don't do a 60-40 balance. I just run the car and based on
Yeah.
what the car does, decide where to put weight. Generally speaking, I don't put weight at all in the car unless it is just unruly, and then I'll put some weight in the pod or something like that. And if it's too rolly, then I'll put the weight back behind the rear axle or something like that. But I definitely want to hear Jim's point of view on that.
I have a totally different point of view, sort of, in that I understand what Dewan is saying, that there's physics involved, and he wants to know an exact answer, and there is no exact answer. What's happening, if you take that example, a car down on Electric Dreams that had 80 grams of downforce now has 0. If you add 80 grams of lead, you'll more or less duplicate the downforce, but now you've got 80 grams of lead sitting out back for the pendulum effect. There's too many different things that come into play to say this works on every car every time, let alone the track surface and whether it's plastic or wood. And there's so many variables. What I do is I try to keep the principles in my head, but I just try stuff.
yeah.
I try stuff that I think doesn't work, but try it. And to me, it's just kind of keep the principles in mind, but just do trial and error. Because if you try to quantify it, you're gonna drive yourself crazy, and it may never work. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, never
Yeah.
mind the inertial differences by putting that much weight in the car.
Yeah. You would never put 80 grams, but you see the principle.
Yep.
Back in the day when we were just starting, people would put weight on the top of the motor. And they were trying to raise the center of gravity, which goes totally counterintuitive to what I think that slot cars should do, but it worked for some people on some tracks with some tires.
Yeah.
So there's no do this to every car if this is happening. This just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, there's definitely outliers in setting up that way. The way I did my got the idea about the 60-40 thing is I happened to weigh some of my better handling cars, and it looked like out of the bunch of cars that I weighed, that usually 5941 was about optimum for handling on my track, and that's specific to my track. So that's why I started that, and that's why I started generally doing that. And generally, in my experience, if you've got too little traction, you add weight at the front, and too much traction, you add it at the rear. Too much traction or rolling or something like that. That's generally what works for me on my track.
Yeah, I used to, before I learned from the guys who are smarter than me and experimented more, I used to think putting weight in the back will increase traction. That's just put the weight in the back, get more weight on the rear tires, things will be better. Not realizing all the things that it did that were counter to what I was wanting to happen. But sometimes it did work, right? So, then I'd be thinking, oh, okay, well, that's what I should do, right? But like Jim was saying, depends on
Yeah, the Jim
tires,
rule.
the track, and the car, and how wide the car is, how tall the car is, the compound of the tire. And didn't the Cunningham track, it got a whole new paint surface too, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll change things too.
Seems like
So they painted the polycar track?
No. The
Oh.
Cunningham is the yellow one.
Oh, okay.
The old wood track, original wood track.
Wood track.
Seems like
Okay.
I remember a pretty good discussion about some of the changes people discovered when they went back to run on the rebuilt Cunningham track, refinished Cunningham track. And
I mean, Ian, the spinning pinion show last week, I
Yeah.
think, or
We
was it
talked
the
about-
first episode? They talked about how the setup were completely
Yeah.
different between
yeah, the
Korean
lap
and-
times dropped, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, lap times didn't go up.
Increased.
Slowed down.
And,
Yeah.
They were the first race they ran compared to the same race last year, same cars, they were about 4/10 slower.
And they had to do different things to get the stability that they had before.
Which probably 95% of that was the lack of the downforce, the magnetic downforce.
Magnet brake. Mhm.
I think he mentioned putting weight out to the sides more
Yeah.
rather than in central positions.
But with the far out spec, aren't they? They're specing where the weight goes, right? They're like, you
Yes.
have to put this much weight here.
Yes. And it's mandatory for so just for keeping everything across the board, we're mandated to move the weight from the back to the front for this one race, and then mandated to put it back for until further notice.
Yeah.
Question on what motors are you running in those cars?
It's stock. It's the stock. Gosh, I don't have it. in front of me, but it's the
21.
stock
I don't.
cycles.
We don't run those cars, so I don't even know what motors are in stock.
It's like a 21.3 or 21.5.
Yeah, 20.5. Yeah, I.
Is it a long can or a short can?
It's a long can.
Which
Okay.
car are you talking about, Dwan?
It's the Racer Sideways.
It's the flat
five
6
car.
from
Sorry,
Slaughter.
Which racer sideways? They have different motors.
Group 5.
Group 5.
Group 5 have a flat 6.
That's a flat 6, yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking Revo.
Yeah, the only reason I mentioned motor size is I have found, and this may be what I found, stronger the motor, you have your weight to the back, but you've got a motor that don't have as much torque, you can move it forward and keep the wheels from still breaking loose and get rid of some of the swing weight.
What's an angle winder?
With an angle winder, a flat 6 won't have as much power as a regular angle winder motor. So by moving the weight forward, you're
Moving the weight forward. Yeah, gotcha.
you're gonna get rid of the swing weight.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha. Okay.
But if you have a more powerful motor and you're move it forward, you're losing grip out of the corner, you need to move it back.
Okay.
How do you guys like those Group 5s? Because I always try to get
Great.
our clubs to start running them, but just because they're so weird and so many different ones, but nobody will ever buy in and go, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah,
I love them.
great cars.
They run
Great
really
cars.
good. The flat 6 is an awesome underrated motor in my opinion.
Yeah, there's just like that class has so much variety. Like every
Yes.
time on eBay, I see there's 12 different cars, like different liveries, and like, why are we not? And they're all slotted parts. So I'm like, why are we not running those?
It's great. Yes, all slotted.
But I'm sure we'll add another Can-Am era 1970s class to our next year, so we can have 5 of these now.
Yeah, we love our Group 5s as well. I mean, that's definitely one of the classes we circle back to fairly regularly. We usually run with Scale Auto foam rubber tires, simply because it works better than the stock tires on Electric Sport track. It gets more grip.
What are some of the popular Group 5 models?
In our area, the M1 dominates.
Which one?
BMW or no?
The
is it
M1.
BMW.
The M1. There's 2 BMWs.
Yeah.
Oh, like the fat one with the flares.
Yeah. Well, there's a 320, which is like more like a street car, and then the M1.
320
that was-
turbo. Yeah, that's the only racer
That's what I
sideways
have.
model I have.
I think I have the Skyline, and I have 3. I'm trying to remember which ones I have now.
They have a lot of different ones. There's like a Toyota. There's
We allow
Ford.
you to put a slotted pod in them because some of the early cars from Racer Sideways, the pods were pretty crappy. The current ones are fine, so we just allow you to change the pod to a slotted pod.
Cool.
Checking the YouTube chats for anything. All right. Did that cover everything, Dewan, or?
Yeah. Just basically announcing that we have a race upcoming. That's on the personal side. My doctor tells me that he wants me to lay off traveling for about 2 weeks. So I may listen to him.
May listen to him. Well, get well soon.
Travel
Yeah,
to Modesto, Dwan.
That's a little
Jeremy,
further.
here's the 2 BMWs.
Yeah. Which one you like better? The one on the bottom?
Yeah, the bottom one.
Mm.
This one is pretty much a dog.
That one
It's
looks
the
cool though.
slowest of all the Group 5s
Yeah.
in my track. So
The M1 hasn't been out nearly as long as the 320. I don't think, has it? It's a fairly new model.
I don't know. It's been around for quite a few years.
I feel like the 320 is as far as from Racer Sideways for the Group 5 class, I feel like the 320 came after the M1.
Oh, okay.
Also, does Racer Sideways have a web page? I've never found
No.
anything. Like, why not? That's welcome to the 21st century, people.
They used to. I don't know why they didn't bother keeping it going, but I remember being able to go to Racer, I forget what the URL was, but they had all their Racer Silver line, the resin body handmade ones, and then they had a separate page for Sideways, but I don't know, it disappeared.
Strange.
That is weird.
Didn't Racer Sideways came out of originally? It was Racer was the name of it. They
Yep.
made those really beautiful models.
Yeah.
Expensive.
Very expensive because they were resin casts, handmade, and painted.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good cars though.
Yeah.
All right, floor is open as long as it's slot cars. Anybody on YouTube?
We do have a race coming up in a couple weeks. MR slot car race in Modesto. The rules are out now. It's actually an Electric Dreams race being run in Modesto. So it's a race in Modesto and then a race at Electric Dreams in June, both sponsored by MR Slot Car. Spec parts, spec tires, spec motors, spec wheels, spec gear, and you have to run the Jaguar XK220. So we're hoping for a pretty good turnout, 2-day race in about 3 weeks or so, give or take.
Cool.
That's our team race. The conflicts with our
Marco's
team.
coming, by the way, and he is pitting next to me. I don't know how I got that. I don't know how I got that lucky.
Maybe he's keeping an eye on you.
I was wondering what I did wrong to do that, and then they said, "Well, maybe it was Marco that did something wrong. He has to pit next to you."
Who's,
But Duan, yeah, come on up, come on out.
we have our team race that weekend. So yeah, Faro is having a team race that at Big Lose that weekend. So I'm we get most of our. That's why I get most of my points, because on the individual basis, I'm not getting very many points. All right, I'd love to make it out there.
I wish we had something like Far Out in Northern California, quite frankly. You guys got what, 8 or 10 tracks, and everybody buys in. You have the same cars, the same rules, and everybody gets along. And we've got 4 or 5 tracks, and nobody can get along and decide on common rules for the good of everybody. It's crazy to me, but
Yeah.
I won't go
Make
any
it
further
simple.
than that.
Well,
But
I'm
yeah,
hoping
I
that
do, and there's some things I don't like about Far Out in terms of the rule set,
absolutely.
but that's just me. But the
Restricted.
overall concept works. It's great. I love it. Probably the best club in the country, or group of clubs in the country.
Well, I'm going to be pitching for starting a Far Out Las Vegas edition. Not very soon, but soon, sometime in the future.
Oh,
Once you get your slot car facility opened up.
Absolutely. Drawing some tension from that concept, not having it done yet. Okay. I did submit a couple of questions to both Ian and Todd for their YouTube podcast, and I did get the feedback from them. But I'd like to pose it to this group at the same time. And I know that well, the question was because they brought up some of their practices on what they do and breaking down a car and building it back up and things like that. And Todd alluded to making sure that his axles were straight.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, could you share some of the tools you use to check the axles and things like that? So he gave me the manufacturer that he's using. But I was just wondering what other things out there. I know that Dennis pointed out a couple of axle straight testers, I guess what it was, and So that was one question. The other question was, what do they use for some of their bench testing? If they do anything like Henry's old, not old, but his dynamo, gosh darn it. You know,
I know.
the bench tool that has all the different uh, readouts of different characteristics of the cars and things like that. So I was just kind of curious of what things are out there. 'Cause, again, being a guru, and I'm real on the tech side. I just don't have the finger skills to be up there in the performance level. So,
I think
um,
I think they made a good point in that it's it's not that these things are secret or particularly difficult or magic or anything. It's just about how much time you want to spend on the thing as a whole, right? How much time you want to spend on that car. A little bit here, a little bit there. Hours and hours a day, right? I mean, you could do what they do. Tear a car right down to nothing. You know,
yeah, I
and then
know a
look
guy
at
that spent I know a guy that spent several weeks getting his tires in tune.
And
Right,
so if
Jim?
you're if you really enjoy doing that, then by all
Yeah.
means, I mean, get the axles that he gets. I think Dennis a long time ago showed a 3D printed axle straightness gauge tool. Basically, it just holds the axle in a thing and then has an offset gauge, stuck to it. Jim might have showed something like that, to basically measure what's it called, the run out of an axle, how straight,
Mhm.
and then pick the straightest ones for your car.
Yeah.
Throw the
I
other ones away
what was that?
and throw the other ones away.
And throw
Yeah,
the other
don't
one.
put them in your pit box and go come back to it 6 months later.
Me,
Yeah. You gotta learn
not
how
so
to do that.
much. I'm just as happy to roll it on a hard surface, and if it doesn't go whoomp, 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 then I could consider it straight enough to stick in the car. You know, uh, I don't have, the bushings and stuff that I use, have enough tolerance that doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, so a little bit of lubrication, glue the bushings in, as long as the chassis doesn't, go wiggly woggly, like a weeble or something, then I'm fine. But then I'm not trying. It is not my goal in life to be up with the top guy.
The elite class.
But there's a somewhat sort of easy way to check axle straightness. Um, it may not be the best way, but it works. Put the axle in the car
And then
and take the
slide it
tires off so the axles, put a collar on it or something so it's in the car. But the axle's sticking out. Spin it up at 6 or 8 volts. Put your fingernail on it on the end of the axle. It should just rest there like there's nothing there. If you feel
6 to 8
anything at
volts.
all,
6 to 8 volts. Uh-huh.
yeah, 8 or whatever, 8 or 9 volts. Get the axle spinning pretty good, like it would normally run, and then put the back or your fingernail on, rest it on the axle. Like I said, it should sit there like there's nothing there. If it bounces at all, if you can feel any vibration in your fingernail, throw the axle away. That's a kind of an easy way to do it. I know there's rollout or run out gauges that do it for you, or do it on a bench, but that works. And kind of back to the other point that Greg was talking, the level that Ian and Todd are racing at, a tenth of a second makes a huge difference in whether you win or lose. And for a lot of us, it doesn't make any difference. So, I mean, I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying take it for how
Yeah,
they're saying
the,
it.
the gain that you get out of that is going to be it's such a minute level that it may
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But
Over
a
a course
tenth
of
of a
an
lap
18-minute
over 10
race.
laps, you're now 1 lap ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
So it is a big deal.
But like
But
Greg said,
what would you say the percentage of poor axles that come stock in most of our hobby grade cars. Is it really that high of potential that you really you throw out that many axles that it's really worth the? 'Cause I had never looked at the straightest of my axles. I've had a bad axle before, but I never really I just assumed that the tolerance that they come out of the QA from the manufacturer is going to be quote good enough. But who
Nope.
knows? Is it a really a decent percentage of them that are that bad?
I don't think it's very high.
Okay.
I think that
If you buy good quality ones.
I'm
Yeah,
talking
I
about
mean,
stock manufactured
yeah,
stock cars.
a Skeletric axle is gonna be
That's another ballpark.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but if you're
That's
talking
not a
about
hobby grade. I'm not talking about not my social grade. I'm talking about the hobby grade for competition. Yeah.
I
Chris
can't think
Walker
of it.
mentioned I can't remember the part number, but I think it was a Koford axle, and that's all he uses, which those
Yeah, you did
typically
mention
come
that.
out dead straight because they're made for slot cars from a manufacturer that has to have an axle that'll run out at 90,000 RPM.
wow.
Wow. Yeah.
I can't think of a time I've ever had an axle from a slotted or racer sideways or anything in that category of slot car that was bad enough for me to want to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have low standards, so
The same boat. I have been anyway. Yeah.
Were you just looking for other tools as well, or just axle stuff?
Yeah, I was just, while we're on that subject, I just kind of mentioned what other benchmark tools are you using. And I know you were putting together something. You were doing quite a few things that we're still kind of waiting on, but
Yeah, but I'm still sucking, so it doesn't really matter. I think the best tool I ever purchased, I purchased this maybe
I
20 years
have
ago, like
that.
when these
I
first
have
came
that
out.
exact
Yeah, because you
tachometer.
buy 5 of those like Piranha, Predator, whatever the motors are. I don't remember. You'll get one that's
Oh,
21.5, but you'll also get one that's 24,000. And you're like, how the hell is this possible? And it's like the tolerances for those like cheapy motors that we buy, it's all over the place. And without this, yeah, it's only a couple thousand RPMs difference, but I'd still rather have the faster one. And even if you break it in, well, I broke in my faster one now, it's even faster than the other one. So it's like, I don't know. I remember Marco talking about that when he'd do a motor that he could spec and have a quality assurance on them, but the market's just too flooded right now for doing that because everybody and their brother now makes a motor, it seems.
Well, expound on how you just put a gear
Oh,
on that with a little marker, and then you just
well,
use
I
the.
just 3D printed a
Yep.
little doohickey that I stick on the motor.
Okay.
I know.
Just,
I don't know if I have a
take the
motor laying around
take
here.
the pin. You take the pinion off and put that
I take
on,
the
or
yeah, take the yeah, you can do it that way too with a little
You don't
sticker
have to
because
take the pinion off if
these
you
come with a
use it.
sticker
Yeah,
and
it's got a bunch of stickers there, and I put it on a gear. You can see the gear that I've got here now.
little slotted gear.
Yeah, it's just a regular slotted gear that's old and worn out,
Sure.
but it's got a little piece of reflective tape on it that comes with the tachometer, and you just screw it tight to the shaft
motor.
of the motor, and then spin it, and then
How,
measure the RPM. It's
I always
how,
do 12
how
volts.
much of the shaft has to be available from beyond the pinion for that?
just enough to get the set screw tight. It doesn't have to be a straight piece or anything like that. It can wobble all over the place because you're not going to be totally accurate anyway, no matter what you do. So it gets you in the ballpark. And what I do is I measure all my motors. When I get a motor, I'll stick this on here. For instance, I'll put I got to loosen this. It's got it too tight on there.
So I do mine on a little jig that I've created before and that holds the motor flat, and then I just let it
You
go
got all the
through.
little tricks.
I'm an idiot, I know. But then I did it for FF motors and for regular Mabuchi size motors, and just like whenever I get a new car and it's going to be for a class, I always test a couple motors because maybe it's just psychological, like, but I don't want to be down 2,000 RPM off the bat, and I know it's not a big deal, but it is to me.
Yeah. Just every little bit counts. So
Every
Now,
time I hit the straightaway and I get blown off and I'm like, we have the same car. Why are you pulling 2 feet on me here? I just assume it's motor. So
I do the same thing you guys do, but unlike Mike, I purchased an NSR 2 millimeter axle shaft gear. By doing that, you don't have as much vibration as using the other axle gear. So
Yeah.
if you go to
actually,
NSR website, you can buy a gear for a 2 millimeter axle, and that fits your motor shaft perfect. Less vibration that way.
To go back and play the devil's advocate again, and probably piss everybody off. When you dyno two motors and one's 21 and one's 24, and they're theoretically the same spec, probably the reason is the one at 24 has weaker magnets. And because a weaker magnet motor will typically spin up faster, and if you put them in the car, it's not going to have as much torque, and it may actually go slower.
how dare you, Jim?
No,
Now you've thrown my
not.
whole world into chaos.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start putting the slowest motor in, and if I lose, I'm blaming the Rose Racing.
Okay, so
There's no substitute for testing.
So that it goes back, yeah, it goes back to the original thing. Try different stuff.
some time ago, I heard Chris Walker mention something. He was talking in general about motors and the manufacturer of motors and the motor business. And he mentioned that they're essentially toothbrush motors. And that,
Yeah.
of course, got me peaked. And so I started collecting all my old toothbrush motors. And so that what you have to do is test them. You know, you don't know if they're any good or not, but they may be just as good as the Professor Motor motors or the slot car corner motors, or who knows.
Yeah. A long time ago, like 40 years ago, maybe 35, they did a race, an RC race, where you took a dust buster and you took the batteries and the motor out of it because they were the same batteries that you used in an RC car and the same size motor. So they had a dust buster race. You tore the dust buster apart, put the drivetrain in your RC car and raced it.
That's funny.
On those bench top tools, Henry's little gig or whatever you want to call it. I know that it brings the whole drivetrain in and measures and comes up with a number based on the entire drivetrain performance or output on the track versus just testing the motor per se. What else
So
do you get out?
so what I do with that, have you ever seen one of the bench tests with like the aluminum drum that you put your car on there and it's spinning that aluminum drum to break in the motor? Ever seen one of those?
Oh, for like it puts a centrifugal
Yeah, so
load on the motor.
you have to put a load on the car 'cause it's trying to turn that drum.
Yeah.
So I've got one of those, and I'll put my car on it. What I did is I drilled a hole on the side of on the one end of the drum, and I put a piece of tape on that drum, and I used that same tack Jeremy was showing. So I don't care what motor it is; it's the gear ratio on the motor. And you can try different motors if one's faster or slower, like Jim Rose was saying. You'll see which one pulls the load at the most RPMs.
Yeah, that's basically how I use the H&B test bench that you're talking about.
It's an H&B test bench Jeep.
You could probably determine in a ballpark sort of way how much snap the motor has too.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, the way that a lot of people use the test bench is, and especially with the the newer version that has the amp readout as well as the voltage readout and the RPMs and all that.
It tells you what the load is.
It tells you what the load is, the amp, the power load anyways. To figure out how much snap the car has, you put the car on, and then when the car is all set up on the thing, then you turn the power on to the rail, and then you look at the RPMs and kind of gauge how long it takes to get up to speed. Not quite as accurate as like a torque measurer where you like stick a thing on the motor to push down on a weight and change the volts and amps that you're giving to the motor to whatever. But I think most of the people, I have one, and a lot of the other guys in the club have one. Most of them basically use it to figure out which of their cars they want to race uh, based on the speed of the car at the wheels, right? So when I use it, I'm trying to figure out which Revo slot group, not group two, but GT2 I want to race. I'll just put them all on there in turd and see which one has the fastest, and then I'll also run them around the track to see which ones
That's what I
feel
do.
the best, right? And because sometimes faster, like Jim was saying, faster doesn't necessarily have the same get up and go, but also just because a car is faster doesn't mean it's easier to drive or more
Manageable.
consistent or all the other things that come into play.
Gear ratios.
Yeah, and I don't even play with gear ratios. Most of our series are basically stock anyways. The only time gear changes are allowed is when the same manufacturer of the same class of car release different gear ratios from over time. So we're like, okay, well, if you've got an early one with this gear ratio or a later one with this gear
Great.
ratio, you can each race them or you can each switch to the other gear ratio if you really want to. But it's usually just one tooth different on a spur or something like that. Not a huge difference. So yeah, it's usually figuring out which is the fastest car based on the at wheel speed versus the RPM of the motor. And you can figure out the RPM of the motor quite easily with a little bit of math, because if you know the gear ratio and the
Right.
diameter of the tire, or actually you don't even need to know the diameter, just the gear ratio, then you figure it out. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
That way you
And
don't
my
have to take the motor out of the car to figure out the RPMs.
and to your point, my process is I'll take the two, three, or whatever four cars for that particular class that I may have, and before every race, I will go ahead and just test them out, and I test them. I can test them on all four of my lanes and either direction, and included in there, I get the fastest, the car with does the fastest lap out of those typical. But I also have in there how many times I come out of the slot, how many times, and what my personal feeling is. I do a rating of a scale of 1 to 10 of my personal driving confidence in that car is. So I can have a faster car, but it's just unmanageable and certain, things like that. So I factor that in, and then I determine which car of those three or four that I'm planning on making the primary car and the secondary car, and just take two of them with me. But the odd thing is, I'll take those same four cars 3 months later when we come to the same class and do the same test, and it can be completely different. Not completely different, but one car went out over another car that was different than the first time I did that same scenario.
Track surface conditions
Yes,
are the
temperature,
main thing. Yeah.
yeah.
the
And the motors breaking in as you go through the process. I see the changes. So like I'll get because I'm going through 8 lanes. Four all 4 lanes in one direction and 4 lanes in a different direction, and I'll see the performance of a car actually increase throughout those 8 lane, all due to just I'm calling it break in, but I see it speed up. So the first part of my data shows the car was, finished in fourth place out of the first three or four races, and then all of a sudden it jumps up to first place. And so it's kind of you just got to do the testing, like everyone says.
and some cars will slow down.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, and
Ideally, it's the other way.
One thing I would do, Duan, if a car's been sitting for a while and you haven't run it, is just uh, clean out the motor with contact cleaner. Just hit the com with as little a contact cleaner as you can hit it with. Just hit the spray bottle. Just click it on and off. Just to put a little bit of contact cleaner on the commutator, spin it around by hand, and then re-oil the motor. So you're starting from a fresh motor, because they do get dirty and they slow down slightly, but not, maybe a tenth or so. But
Mhm. Okay. All right. Again, but the biggest factor in me is, you know, you could be the biggest techie in the world, but if you don't have those the hand coordination, motor skills or video game type techniques. And everything. None of that's going to factor into your performance. But so
I
yeah.
mean, a really well set up car is easier to drive, even for somebody who's not a Todd or an Ian, because it'll be more consistent and handle really well,
Predictable.
predictably. Yeah. So I mean, you might not be racing at their level because of your finger, but you'll be racing at a slightly higher level than you would normally with your own car because just don't have the skills, don't have the experience or time really to do the same level of tuning and tuning that they do. So yeah, if you go to a big race and Jocham lets you borrow a car, friggin' borrow Jocham's car.
Works for me.
And I've experienced that. I had Walt build up. I had him take two of my cars for I forget which one of the national races that we had, or one of the electric dream races that we had, the big ones. And he took those cars and tuned them up and everything. And he tested them out. He had Mike McClanahan test it out, and they were the cars were coming in right at the cars that they were racing's level, and then they handed it to me. And it was a rocket. I loved it and everything, but I'm still, 6/10, easily 6/10 under them. So it's the skill level of the driver more so than the car. The car was just phenomenal. And yeah, and yeah, so that punctuates your what you were saying. It but the car just felt so I knew I had one of the top performing cars that was demonstrated by some of the top performing drivers, and it was in my hands, and I finished where I finished.
Yeah, and that's the main reason that when I go to events like that, or even with my own club, I don't I don't I don't expect to be up top, and I don't fuss and fret if I don't get up top, because I know that I'm just not as good as those top drivers. So
Right.
and
That,
it's not
that trans
important enough for me to go put hours and hours at the track to hone my skills and hours at the workbench to hone my tuning.
yeah, and
For
that
me, it's way
translates
more
across.
social, way
I
more
got
social.
something for you, Dwan. Try this. And I don't know if it'll work or not, but what the heck. Get one of the little video games. You can get them on the phone or whatever. There's slot car video games. They're pretty basic and rudimentary, but it's similar hand-eye coordination. Get one of those, play it for an hour or two the night before the race and see what happens.
Okay. And I have true arcade games here. I'm just, I'm going to tell you my analogy. Coming from a background of in the sports and managing sports and things like that at an exceptionally elite level, you know that there's true raw talent out there, and they're what I call elites. And although I consider myself a very highly competitive and much better than average person in almost, I won't say everything that I do, but a lot of things that I do, I'm not at the elite level at any of those things. And I have to respect those elite people that are out there. And I look at, I'll just use the analogy of the Pro Bowlers Tour, So I know that I know those guys. I competed with those guys, and I could win one time out of 100 events or 100, uh, head-to-head competitions with them, but they're going to win the majority of those other competitions because that's just their level. You get lucky a few times. So there's some true raw talent out there, and video game pros and uh, slot car finger coordinating pros, things like that. So I know that, and that's what I kind of settle myself in at. But I'm still having fun, right?
What's all
You
about.
can only do as good as you can do, but you can optimize how good
Yes,
you do based on the skill level you have.
I think something
and I am doing better. So that's true. But my expectations of winning a race, it's just you know, it may be a fluke because sometimes I've won heats against some, you know, competitive guys, and so that shows me that I've improved. But that'll be one heat out of 20 or 30.
I think you could probably set up a little HO track would help your reflexes too. Jim mentioned that before, that a lot of those guys that run the fray and all that kind of stuff are really good racers no matter what.
That's a good point. Instead of doing video games, buy a small HO track and just practice the crap out of it because those cars are intense because they're so fast. And then if you can run those cars that are so fast and so quick, then everything slows down when you go to the 30-second scale.
I tried that by increasing the voltage of my regular cars and trying to race with that. That was one of my little experiments, but you know,
Good way to destroy
that's
your cars.
that's true too. Yeah. Okay, great. And I don't consider myself at the bottom of the pack. I got a lot of guys that we're racing with that are just very good, and I respect that. I respect them. So you know,
Man, you're racing. You're racing. You know,
okay.
not me. Shelf queens.
Yep.
Except for a couple times a year.
And that's my attitude too. And I have my social gatherings. So that's where I really get my satisfaction out of is the social gathering. But at
Man,
the same time, because I've been so much of a competitor at all kind of levels, I want to, you know, participate in those things. But my expectations are they're in check.
Yeah. It's always nice to do better than you expect.
All right.
Anybody else want to contribute to that or got a different topic you want to bring up?
You know, I'm not the best driver in our club, and I'm not the best tuner, but I can put it all together and be in the top half usually. That's all I shoot for. And like if I get that one win per season, I cherish that all season. I'm like, hey, I beat everybody in the club one time. And whereas like we have that one guy in the club who's been racing for 40 years, and he shows up and he's got two mismatched tires on there, and his car's slower than yours, but he still wins the race. And you're like, what? I don't understand it. I don't get it. But it's just some of those people are just so good that you can't do anything. So everybody's got their own, you got to find your own niche and what you like.
Yeah. So true.
That
Yeah.
that driver that Jeremy's talking about, he is just really good at driving the cars. He's so good.
You guys in the same club?
Well, we've raced together, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he knows who Jeremy's talking about.
Yes,
He
I do.
knows. He knows. And there's one guy in the club who's really talented, but he's a hell of a tuner. And he spends way too much time tuning. And now he's in the top, and it's just like how much I can't put in the same level of effort. Like I can't do it. But I still have fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
All
like
right.
also like when you're racing, for me, if I'm racing, the race is always won or lost in the corners. But every once in a while, there's somebody who wins it on the straights, and I'm always in my head like, you dirty dingo! I know you're cheating. There's no way you're pulling that 3 feet on me on the straights. But I can't. I don't go. I don't call out everybody, but always in the corners. Like I can do everything within my power, get the cartoon, get it handling perfectly, and be competitive. It's just that stupid straight. I know I'm gonna lose it in the straight, or I get taken out. I was everybody gets taken out here or there, and I've taken other people out, like not intentionally, at least that I
Sure,
admit,
yeah.
but not that I admit, but it happens. Like if we're racing hard and you're the top guy in the club and you're on my outside trying to pass me, that's on you. You shouldn't be there. You got to respect how bad I am at driving. So, but anyway, everybody has their own fun in the club.
That kind of reminds me of on Monday night, one of the guys who is a good tuner and good racer. He just kept getting knocked out by the drivers who just couldn't keep their tail in check, and he has a habit of blaming the other driver. And there's a little bit of that, sure. Like the other driver seeing you coming around should maybe reel it in a little bit. But when it's for position, well, they have no reason to just let you go by just because you think you're faster than them. If you are so much faster than them, then you go around them, but not outside of them on a turn, right? You try to go around somebody on their outside, and you know they're wiggling wagging all over the place. That's that's on you for
Yeah,
putting yourself in a bad position. And he did that 5 or 6 times the other night. And every time he got mad at the other person, it's like, dude, just
Well, I keep driver profiles in my head of every club member, and I kind of know, oh, I'm not going to pass you, just because of the way the lanes are set up. And now I'm in the red lane, and I know there's only 2 places to pass. I'm like, well, I'm never going to pass you because you're not going to let me. And I know if I try to come near there, you're going to gun it, and we're going to both be taken out. So I just had to settle in for, waiting for him to crash or just following slowly behind. But that's part of the strategy too of the racing is like, when can I pass you and not get taken out? I mean, it is a skill to learn. Like some guys that in the club that are still new, they just always race the same in every corner and they don't stop. And you try to tell them, look for where you can pass. You can't always pass where you think you can. So that's part of the fun, I think, the strategy.
he's one of the longtime members, so it's not like he's new.
Mm.
It's not like he doesn't know the guys who wiggle too much. It's like and because thank you, Josie, because we race, crash, and burn, it's even more important to pick your battles and to not
And
put yourself at risk.
one of the fun things also is like there's probably been 6 times I can count in my life where I looked around at who I was racing with and I was like, okay, the power's going to start and we hit that first curve. I'm going to be the last into the curve. And it's saved me because like the first curve, bam, big crash down there and I'm past it. I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
So like you just have to kind of get to know the people that you're racing with and what they're going to do and hope for the best.
Yeah.
maybe that's how I
But
won the heats that I won because I get out in front right out the gate, and somehow I'm able to if I'm concentrating and things just work out well, I just stay there, and people are afraid to go around me because
yeah, you're that guy.
they know who I am, so they're
Yep.
afraid to go around me.
A win's a win. And with our crash and burn racing, if you get the whole shot, as we say, and you're in the lead, and then you're racing along and nobody wants to pass you because they're afraid of getting crashed out, you still won, right?
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
goes into the turn and you're like Jeremy and you just hold back because it's going to be carnage, and they all crash out either turn 1 or turn 5, and you're the only one left on the track. You still won.
That's right.
That's
You,
part of the
you,
race.
you have a problem if your name becomes a verb. I got Dwan.
For stopping.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of an incident from Monday night. I forget how many laps in, but this is all 3 cars got crashed out in the same turn.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is that a club track?
this is Blair's track on Monday. Yeah.
Was this a crash and burn race?
Yeah, we pretty much only race, crash, and burn. So basically,
Wow.
I forget which guy came out first. Probably the orange car is obviously last. Probably the gold car was on one of the 2 inside lanes and came out and nicked the blue car while it was crossing, and he got knocked out. And then this guy comes around and is just couldn't stay out of the carnage. But I'm like, okay, and it was like one of those upsets. Like everybody's like, come on! I'm like, don't move the cars. I got to get a picture of this because it's hilarious in a sad and frustrating way, but hilarious all the same.
Do you only get one out?
We race 2-minute heats, but we race 1 minute at a time. So if you crash during the first minute, you wait till the second minute to get more laps.
And
then
everybody's positioned exactly the way they are coming back on, right? The position exactly where they are.
Yeah, so they basically go into their lane as close to that position on the track as possible.
Mhm.
So, yeah, these guys basically, we just sat around waiting for the minute to finish. then they went back in their lanes and took some more laps. Took another minute to make some laps.
Hold on.
But that was all kinds of fun. None of them were the guy that I mentioned earlier who gets really upset when things like that happen. He probably would have broken his controller, slamming it down in frustration. But he's the hothead. Every club's got a hothead, right?
I've had to tell myself, keep cool. You're just racing toy cars.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you have a series of incidents like that, you just get frustrated and angry, and it's like, it's not worth it. Just let it go.
Yeah.
That being said, there are certain people that I really like to beat.
For sure.
And not just because they're fast.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, are you guys all chatted out already?
No, not really.
So I'll just kind of randomly chat. So Garth sent me the Maserati chassis. I printed one. On Monday, one of the guys had a Maserati for me to compare it to. Needs some slight adjustments. I told Garth I'm sure he'll work on that. But I do have the Maserati in my possession, so I can continue to iterate and test. So that will happen much more quickly now that I actually am in possession of a Maserati. the PLA I printed the first iteration with is garbage. I will never use that for an important print again. I was trying to push the screw through the body post hole, and it broke the body post off of the chassis just from trying to push the screw.
Wow.
I'm like, wow. Okay.
Wow.
Not good material. It's some kind of weird PLA. I think PLA F or H or something. I didn't even notice that it was this variation of PLA when I bought it. I bought it because it was cheap. Live and learn.
So Greg, you have a body then, right?
I have the body. I have
cool.
a whole slotted Maserati high detail car, so I guess that's the GT3 version. But like Mike said, that chassis will fit under both.
And so
bodies.
the two differences that you told me was the distance between the two posts was off by about 1 millimeter.
It's hard for me to judge when I put the when I first put the chassis into the body and kind of looked through the holes to see if they were lining up properly.
Okay.
It looked pretty close.
Okay.
So it might only need 0.5 mil, and that's the front two body posts are fine relative to one another.
Okay.
It's two, and then the single body post at the back that need to be stretched out.
Okay.
A little, because basically when I put the screws in, the chassis was being bowed outwards.
Yeah, that I think that I think that's both. I only have two of the Maseratis, and both of them have wonky crap on the body. Okay, you know what I mean? So, so if I go 1 millimeter, a half north and a half south, and then 2 millimeters lower on the rear post, right?
I think at least, yeah, start with 2
and
millimeters.
then I'll send that to you and let me know how that. I mean, it's pretty easy for me to change it around. So
I am aware. That's why.
okay, cool. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, 2 millimeters shorter on the post at the rear, and then no more than 1 millimeter total increased distance between the front body posts and the rear body post.
Okay.
It might only need 0.5 total, but yeah. And then I'll print it out and check.
I'll do that. I'll do that real soon. Okay.
All right, everybody's all done with their live chatting, so I'll end the stream. So until next week, everybody, bye. Bye. Stream ended, and now you can just casually chat about things.
I've got a